Now, if there's one topic that strikes fear into many JetEngine users, it's relationships. No, I'm not talking about personal relationships, but database relationships. One-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many type relationships. But they needn't be scary at all. And in this introduction video, I'll show you how to create your first relationship, how to add the data to your listings, and finally, how to insert them into your templates. Now, while this is an introductory guide, if you'd like to see more examples of types of JetEngine relationships, let me know in the comments section below. And I'm sure I can work with Crocoblock to create some more advanced guides for you. But before we start, let me just quickly introduce myself. My name is Paul C from WP Tuts, and I'm here working with Crocoblock to bring you a series of tutorials on their popular dynamic tools, plugins like JetEngine and JetSmart filters. Now, if you're ready to start learning, let's just jump over onto the computer and see what we were working on today. As always, let's kick this off by taking a look at what we're actually going to be creating throughout this guide. So we're back onto my test site, which you've probably seen in the previous videos, and if we scroll down, there's the list of properties. Now, any of the properties can be rented out by a specific agent. That agency or agent is linked dynamically through a relationship between the agent and the property. Now, one agent could be an agent for multiple properties, and that's what we're going to look at today, creating a one-to-many relationship. So let me just demonstrate what I'm talking about. This is a first property. We click and open that up. We take a look on the right-hand side, we scroll down, we've got an agency contact, and this is the agent that's renting this property. So if we come back out and take a look at a different property, for example, Edinburgh Heights, we'll open that up and we have a different agent inside there. If we come back out again and take a look at something like luxury poolside apartments, hopefully we'll have a different agent again. And there we go, we've got Williams Properties. So this is all set up through a one-to-many relationship. So basically, one agent can manage multiple properties. And that's what we're going to work on. So let's take a look at how we go about creating this relationship. Now, to start off with, I've already created a properties custom post type. Now, I've done this in previous videos, so you can see this is what we're starting off with. This is what we've used in several of these videos on dealing with the dynamic plugins for JetEngine and so on. So what we're going to do is let's take a look at what's inside there. You can see we've got the featured image, we've got a gallery associated with it, the address, the kinds of things you'd expect to do as a typical custom post type, especially when you're working with listings. But what we want to do now is link this through to the actual vendor itself, the people that are going to be renting these properties out. So how do we go about doing that? Well, it's quite simple. We need to create another custom post type, which we're then going to link together by using a relationship. Jumping back over to the dashboard, we're now ready to start setting things up. So I've already created my custom post type for my properties, like I've already said. So the next thing we need to do is create one for our vendor or agent. To do that, we're going to come back to JetEngine and go back into post types. There's our properties. We're now going to add a new one in, and we're just going to call this agency. We can click underneath. That'll create the post type slug for us. We don't worry about the labels. We can leave those as they are, but if you wanted to customize those, you could do that. Advanced settings. We're going to come into here, and what we're going to do is make sure that everything is set up the way we need it to be. So we could set this as hierarchical if we wanted to, but we don't need to because we're going to keep this structure really simple. It's just going to be a single level. Then we're going to come in and we're going to say we want to add one extra field inside here, and we want that to be the thumbnail. So we could put the logo or the person's photograph, whatever you wanted to do. Now, once we've done that, the next thing we're going to do is just add in a couple of meta fields. This example is going to be fairly simple, but the principle is more important than the specifics we're covering in this particular video. So what we're going to do now is we're going to call this agent telephone. I'll click underneath, there we go. We'll leave all those other settings as they are, that's fine. We're going to close that up. We're going to add another meta field in, and we're just going to call this agent email. And click underneath, and that's perfectly fine as well. So we'll leave those as they are. Okay, so that's the basics done. We'll add our custom post type. And now when we come back into our post types, we've now got two. So if we look at these, we need to make sure we understand one simple thing: the relationship between these two custom post types. So for example, one agent could have multiple properties, and that's the way we're going to work. We're going to work with a one-to-many relationship, but you're not limited to that. You could do one-to-one, many-to-many, or one-to-many. But the principles, like I say, once you understand how this works, it is a lot easier than it may first seem. So the custom post types created, we now need to create or define that relationship between the two of them. Now to do that, we come over to the relations option under the JetEngine menu. And inside there, we have a list of any or all of the post relations that we've created. Click Add New, and from there, we can now set up the basics that we need for this particular relationship. So the first thing you want to do is create a name. Now, I would recommend that you create a name that immediately defines exactly what's going on. So we're just going to say agent to property relation. That just means when I'm looking through my list of relations, I can see exactly what relates to what. Next up, we've got the parent post type and the child post type. Now this should be self-explanatory. The parent, in this example, the agent, would then have child entities or child post types, which would be the properties. So to do that, we change the parent post type, and from there we have all the options available, and we're going to come down to agency, which is the custom post type we've just created. Next, the children of agency is going to be the properties. So we'll choose properties from there. So that's the first three sections set up, and hopefully that makes sense so far. Next up, we've got our relationship type. Now, if you don't understand how these relationships work, there is a link through to the help documentation. But let me just quickly say how it works. One-to-one means that one agent could only be connected to one property. Next up, we've got one-to-many. So you've got one agency or one agent could have multiple properties. So the relationship would be a one-to-many. And finally, you've got many-to-many, which means that multiple agents could be linked to multiple properties. So if you had an agency or you had properties that were being managed by multiple agencies and you wanted to list all those multiple agencies, you'd set a many-to-many. The example we're going to do is going to have one agency with multiple properties. So that's going to be a one-to-many. Then you've got the parent relation. Now, most of the time, nothing's going to be available to you inside here, but from time to time, you will see some options. We're going to leave that as it is for this example because I don't want to get too complex and too deep into the whole process. I want to give you more of an overview of the basics of how this works. So then we've got advanced settings. And all this really means is, do you want to give the child and the parent the ability to link to the opposite? So in other words, underneath a parent post type, so you could be working with an agent, you could then link those through inside that custom post type to the different properties. And conversely, you can then be editing or creating a property and you could link that through to the agent that's associated with it. For this example, having the two-way option makes life a little easier because it doesn't matter which way we're working, we can create that relational link. With that being said, we've now set everything we need up. We're going to click on Add Relation and that will be a relationship created. Now, before we move on to the next step, what we need to do now is just create a couple of agents so we have something to work with in our relationship. So what we're going to do is come into the agency section and we're going to come and add new. Now, I'm not going to show you every single one of these. I just want to quickly show you how the relationship works in this context. And then we'll also take a quick look at the relationship and how that works in the context of creating properties. But let me just show you what we've got to start off with. So we're going to just say, we're going to call this agent A. And from there, we're going to just drop in some content, just some basic placeholder text. We'll drop in a telephone number, so we'll just put in something, doesn't really matter what it is, and an email address, the same again. There we go. We'll set a featured image, so we've got someone inside there we can link this through to, so we've got an image to work with. And then this is where the relationship comes in, because at the moment we've created an agent, we've got properties linked, or we've got properties created, but no link, no relationship between the two. So what we need to do is just start typing inside here. So we'll just say Edinburgh, so for example, and you can see there's Edinburgh Heights. I'll click to add that one in. So now we've created an agent. We've also created that relationship between this particular agent, agent A, and this property, Edinburgh Heights. So once we publish that, we've now created our first agent and our first link through. So I'm going to quickly go through and add a few more in there. But before I do, let me just jump over to the properties and show you the same thing in reverse. So this is linked through to Edinburgh Heights. Let's come over to our properties and we'll just take a look at Edinburgh Heights inside there. So there it is. We're going to click to open that up. And you can see if we scroll down now, there's our select agency. And you can see agent A is selected inside there. So it's very easy. Whichever way you want to work, this is going to link through to that relevant data. So I'm just going to go ahead now and set up a couple more agents. And then we'll take a look at the next stage in working with this particular project. So now we've got 3 agencies all linked up to the relevant properties. So the next thing you need to do now is create the way of actually outputting the data for a particular agency and then put that into the template for our single property template. Now to do that, we need to create a new listing. To do that, we just come to JetEngine and into listings. And from there, we can create our new listing. So let's select add new. And we're going to set up the parameters now for this. So the listing source, it's a custom post type. So the listing source is post, but you can see we do have other options available. The next step is from post type. Where do we want to actually pull the data from? So for this example, we want to come down and choose agency. Then we're going to give this a name. So we're just going to call this agency property listing. And we can then choose what we want to use to actually create this listing. We've got a choice between Elementor and Gutenberg if you're using Gutenberg. We're going to stick to Elementor for this example, and we're going to click create listing. That's going to take us over into Elementor and we can start setting things up. So the first thing we want to do is just make sure that we've got the right data being pulled in. So we're going to scroll down to the bottom and we're going to come down to settings, and inside there we've got the listing settings option. Click to expand that out, and you can see because we set this up when we created the listing, the first 2 options are correct. The listing source is a post, and where we're getting that post type is agency. What I want to set though is the preview width. Because this is going to sit in the right hand column, it's not very wide. I want to set it up so when I'm creating this listing, it gives me a better chance of seeing how it's going to look when we actually insert this into the design. So I'm going to set this to somewhere around 350 pixels. Doesn't have to be perfect, but close enough is going to give us a good starting point. You could then make the listing clickable if you wanted to. And if you enable that, you can choose where do you want to actually have that link created from. So in other words, we can choose from permalink and a pile of other options. Permalink would just basically take you over to the listing for the agent. But we're not going to worry about that. We want to keep this simple. But like I say, if you'd like to see a more comprehensive tutorial on working with more advanced relationships, let me know in the comment section below, and I can take a look at creating something in the future covering more advanced relationships. For now, let's keep this simple to get the concept sort of fixed in your brains so you understand where we're going with all of this. Okay, so now we've done that, the next thing we need to do is start creating the different widgets and dropping all the different elements into our design. Let's head back to our widgets and start pulling all the data in. So let's scroll right the way down to the bottom until we get to the option for listing elements. Now these are all to do with JetEngine, and this is how we're going to use these different tools to make sure we've got the best chance of pulling all the data in and doing all the things we need while sticking inside JetEngine. So the first thing you want to do is pull in the featured image of the agent that we're dealing with. So we're going to drag and drop dynamic image over onto our page, and you can see that now immediately pulls in the post thumbnail. In this example, that's perfectly fine. That's exactly what we want. So next up, we're going to just set some alignment parameters on there. Do we want this to be a linked image? So again, you could set this up to link through to a permalink, so you could take a look at the agency or the agent that's related in this particular section. We're going to leave it as it is though. Image size, we're going to set this to be something like medium, for example. That looks okay. And obviously you can come back in and you can edit this if you find the images are not high enough quality. So there's the first thing. Let's come back down now, and we're going to come back to our widgets. And this time we're going to pull in a dynamic field. So I'm going to drag and drop that into there. And you can see this pulls in what it thinks is the right thing, the title, in other words, the name of this particular agent or agency. And again, that is perfectly fine. We're going to work with that. To speed things up though, let's just duplicate this. And then underneath there, we can now set any parameters we want. So this time we want to put in some of the custom fields that we've created. So we're going to come to the source, and you can see at the moment it says post term user object. Going to change that to metadata. Now metadata will allow you to easily reference any meta fields that you've created as part of your custom post type, or if you just created custom meta fields as part of a normal post type, you could reference those using the same technique. So we're going to choose metadata. Underneath that, the meta fields. So we can now pick and choose what meta field we want to reference. Click to expand that. You can see all of the different meta fields we've got created across all of our different custom post types, and meta fields, custom meta fields, and so on are all listed inside here. Thankfully, they're all also sorted out by basically the custom post type of where the data is being pulled from. So you can see under agency, we've got agency telephone, agency email, and related properties. We're just going to simply choose agent telephone. and that will drop in the telephone number. So now if you want to format this and put extra data into it, we can come down to the customize field output, enable that. What we can do is now we can put something before it. So we're just going to simply put in tel and a colon and a space. So people would know that's the phone number. But you could put pretty much anything inside you, including HTML. Next up, we're going to duplicate that another time. And what we're going to do this time is drop in the email. So again, metadata is perfectly fine. This time we're just going to change this over now to the agent email. Coming down, we're going to change this over to email. One of the cool things I like about this is we can also filter the field output. So let's enable that. And the callback might sound a bit confusing, but all it really means is how do you want to actually output this data? So we're going to click on there, and you can see we're going to say make clickable. You can enable that. You can see that now pulls this in, and if we mouse over it, that will now become a link, which we could immediately use as a mail to. Now, obviously, you could get a lot more creative with this. You could have this link through, and you could have a contact form that pulls in the relevant email address. Loads of really creative things, but that's more a case of dealing with creating custom listings than it is about creating custom relationships. So let's keep this really, really simple. Okay, so we're going to say we're happy with the way that all looks. All we're going to do now is hit publish. Once we've done that, that's now created our listing item. So we're now ready to move on to the next stage. Now with our custom listing created, we're ready to go ahead and put this data into our template. To do that, we're going to come to the template section for Elementor and down into our theme builder. And from our theme builder, we're going to open up the property single. Edit that with Elementor, and then we're going to create that relationship and drop the data into it. Now to do this, I've already created a placeholder. So if I scroll down, you can see we've got agency contact. So what we need to do is just do a search for listing, and that will pull up our listing grid. So we're going to drag and drop that into this section on the right hand side, and you see it now says please select a listing to show. So if you click the left hand column, you can see listing is the first option of the general tab. Let's click on there, and we're just going to come and choose what we want, which is going to be the agency property listing. Click on there, and that'll just pull in all of the relevant data. So this is just going to display all of our agents. We're going to set the column to be 1. And you can see that's using the template we just created, but pulling all the data in, which obviously is not what we want in this example. We only want to display the one that's actually related with this particular property. So how do we go about doing that? We need to create a custom query. Now this is the point that probably causes the most confusion and frustration for anybody that's not really sure how to work with creating these relations and then outputting that data. So what we need to do is come over to the post query section on the left hand side. We're going to open that up. Now we can set advanced query parameters inside here. So we're going to add our first item. So our first item, we can then choose the type. From there, we've got 5 different options currently. We're going to choose the post and author parameters. Because what we need to happen is basically when you take a look at a property, you've got a unique identifier for that particular property. So we're going to take that query that displays the information on the page, and we're then going to link that through the relationship to the agent that's actually associated with that property. So we can't just drop in a meta field or something. We need to create a short code that tells it exactly how to reference that data and what we want to do. Now that sounds complicated, but the reality is once you see how this little string of code is made up, and you can copy and paste it and then just edit what you need, it really isn't as complex as it may first seem. So first of all, we need the starting template for this little bit of code. Now, the link for this will be in the description below, so check that out so you don't have to copy in exactly what I'm typing in right now. So if we take a look at the knowledge base for this particular function, you can see there's paste the macros, and there's 2 kinds of macros. There's the related children from, and then there's the related parents from, and then you've got post type slug. Now this is where the confusion really does tend to come in. When you say post type slug, you're thinking, am I just copying this and just putting it in exactly as it's done there? The reality is, no, you don't. What you need is you need to know what the actual slugs for your custom post types actually are, specifically the ones inside the relationship. So let me show you what I'm talking about. We come back over to our custom post list. We've got agency and properties. Then there's the post type slug. We've got agency and properties. So that's what we need to use to actually tell this little shortcode where the data is inside the relationship. So in other words, let's just take a look at actually using this in context. Now, because a property is a child of a parent, in other words, the property is the child of the agent, which is the parent, we're going to need to take this second shortcode, which is related parents from, and then we're going to say where we want to grab it from. So we're going to copy that little bit of code, and we're going to come back over into Elementor. We're going to drop that include post by IDs. We're going to drop that inside there. Now, you might think that's all you got to do, and you can see no data was found. That's because this is not what we need to happen. We've got to change this second half after the little pipe symbol where it says post type slug to the slug from our custom property type. Just come back over to the listing and you can see there's our post type slugs, agency and properties. We're simply going to grab the name of the parent, in this example, agency. So we're going to select that, copy it and come back over into our template. We're then simply going to replace where it says post type slug, making sure that it's after the little pipe symbol and before the percentage symbol, and we're going to paste that inside there. So we're now saying related parents from agency. In other words, it's going to look for the related parents from the agency custom post type. And you see that immediately now pulls in the relevant data for this particular sample data we have on screen for the relevant agent. And that's how we create that link. So you could now set any other parameters if you wanted to. So if you had multiple agents inside there, you may want to set up additional parameters using a range of different things, like, for example, sorts and things like that. But we've created now that relationship between the property and also the agent associated with it. Let's update this. And let's take a look at our actual site itself and see this in action. So we're back on our sample page, and if we scroll down and we take a look at the first one, which is the industry way, we'll click and open that up. And then you can see there's our option for agency contact, and you can see it's Wyndham Rentals. If we come back out of there and we go to another one, hopefully I'll get a different one this time. And you can see, there we go, Williams Properties. And if we scroll down to something like, for example, let's try Edinburgh Heights, you can see that gives us Agent A. So we've now created that relationship. We've integrated that into our templating. We've created custom listings. All those kinds of super cool things are all set up for us now. And hopefully what you've seen is, well, yes, there's a bit of a learning curve to understanding these short codes. And to be honest, this is another one of those areas that I think really needs to be expanded upon quite considerably to get a good solid understanding. Hopefully this video has given you at least your first steps to getting comfortable with working with relationships and seeing how important these macros or shortcodes or whatever you want to call them actually are in the whole process of creating these relationships. But like I said earlier in this video, if you'd like to see more comprehensive relationships covered in another dedicated tutorial, let me know in the comment section below, and I'm sure the guys over at Crocoblock will be happy for me to create some more content showing you how to do just that. So that's JetEngine relationships in pretty much a nutshell. Now, while this is a fairly simplistic example, the skills and techniques covered are way more important. Once you get to grips with the fundamental skills, you can get much more creative. Now, as always, all of the applicable links for everything I've covered are in the description below. Mine has been Paul C, and until next time, take care.